We have Washington Bureau Chief for News Talk Florida, Jim Williams, joining us. So, Jim, first of all, break down what the policy in the U.S. is when it comes to voting rights for former felons. It varies state by state, right?
It does. At present, there are only 8 states that require mandatory restitution prior to getting your voting rights back. In the 2018 election, the midterm election, there was Amendment 4, which was on the ballot in the state of Florida, basically saying that Floridians had the right to choose whether or not felons who have served their time were allowed to vote again. They overwhelmingly passed it, but then it was decided by the Florida legislature and Governor DeSantis, who are Republicans, that they would put an amendment to the law, which would then require restitution be paid. It was at that point in time that it was considered by many groups as a voter suppression situation. And that led us to a number of legal situations where they were in and out of court. Most recent ruling allowed it to be instated at the moment. And so the restitution that's being paid, or the money that's being gotten by raised, I should say. Go ahead.
Got it. Now, what led to this change in policy, or this push for change in policy in Florida 2 years ago?
Well, because the situation was that they felt, the citizens of the state of Florida, that it was unfair for people to have served their time, but then not have their votes, allowed back. I mean, you get your driver's license, you can buy a house, you can do anything anybody else can do, except you can't vote. And so they felt that was being too, it was being too harsh. And so they overwhelmingly supported it.
So why is it so important to activist groups right now to get more ex-felons voting in Florida specifically? Break that down for us.
Well, I mean, in Florida, let's go back real quick. In 2000, as you all know, Florida was decided by 500 votes, a little over 500 votes,
right.
That made the difference between George W. Bush becoming president and Al Gore not. In 2018, the year that this amendment passed, Governor DeSantis and then Governor Scott, who ran for Senate, Senator Rick Scott, ran against Democratic opponents. And in both cases, the races were decided by less than 32,000 votes. So that the suppressing of potentially, let's say even 100,000 votes is something that
right. It could really make an impact.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it.
Well, how have ex-felons responded to the canvassing to try and get them out voting? What has been that response?
Let's be clear. The target is about 30 to 35,000 felons who owe $1,500 or less. Okay, so these are the lowest possible crimes that were committed, and they're targeting between 31 to 35,000 of them. Now, to be fair, obviously, Mayor Bloomberg and LeBron James, Michael Jordan are the biggest names. However, on this list of people who funded this is the Orlando Magic, owned by the DeVos family. Of course, we know Betsy DeVos serves in President Trump's cabinet. Stephen Ross, who owns the Miami Dolphins, who this past summer was going to hold a fundraiser out in the Hamptons for President Trump. So it's not just the Democrats looking to do this. It's a civil rights issue, if you will.
All right, Jim Williams, thank you so much for breaking this down. You know, the U.S. criminal justice system holds almost 2.3 million people in prisons, psychiatric hospitals, you name it. So obviously